Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take some incredible sources, really dig into them, and pull out the most important, sometimes surprising bits of knowledge for you.
That's the plan.
And today, we're plunging headfirst into ancient Jerusalem. Think Passover, 62 CE. Imagine this city. It's just humming with activity, pilgrims everywhere,
Absolutely packed. But underneath all that religious fervor, there was this real tension brewing. The religious leaders were deeply concerned.
Concerned about what exactly?
Well, about the Nazarene sect, the early Christians. This movement was gaining momentum, and the leaders saw it as, well, a direct threat to their authority, their whole system.
Okay, so they felt they had to do something.
Exactly. And our sources say they came up with this pretty desperate plan, actually. They decided to bring in someone everyone respected, like universally.
That was James.
James the Just, yeah. Jesus' own brother. Revered figure, they called him the Just. Oblius, meaning the defense of the people. Super holy guy.
So the plan was to use his reputation.
Right. Get him up high on the temple pinnacle and have him publicly address the crowds, basically tell them to ignore Jesus and hopefully, quell the whole movement.
Sounds like a calculated move.
Oh, it was calculated. But what's really fascinating and what we're diving into today is how that plan kind of spectacularly backfired and set off this whole chain reaction.
That's what we're exploring. We're looking at this extraordinary claim that the book of Revelation, which people usually think is about, the distant future, might actually be a prophetic roadmap.
A roadmap for events that happened right then in the ancient world, basically between 62 CE and 136 CE.
And the evidence. Our sources talk about 17 receipts, like documented historical moments that seem to line up perfectly.
Yeah, documented fulfillments. And if they're right, it could totally revolutionize how we understand biblical prophecy. It's a big claim.
Huge. So our mission today is to unpack these historical accounts. We'll look at how they align with this, pretty radical interpretation of Revelation.
We want to give you a fresh perspective. Look at the history, the prophecy, balance the big picture with some memorable details. Hopefully deliver some aha moments without, drowning you in information.
Okay, let's get into it. It all starts with what our sources call the triggering event. James, that prophecy, and this completely unexpected fulfillment on April 6th, 62 CE.
So Jerusalem, Passover, 62 CE. The source paints this picture. All the tribes congregated hither, and some of the Gentiles also. The city's overflowing.
And the leaders are nervous.
Seriously worried. They're saying things like, a little more, and we shall have all the people looking for Jesus as the Christ. It was gaining traction. Even among, the ruling class, some were starting to believe.
Now, you mentioned prophecy. Was there something specific hanging in the air, prophetically speaking?
Absolutely. You have to remember, 32 years before this, Jesus himself stood on that Temple Mount. And he said something really specific in Matthew 23:39.
Okay, what was that?
He said, "You will not see me again until you say, 'Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord.'"
Ah, so a condition had been set.
Exactly. And for 32 years, that condition hadn't been met. The leadership certainly hadn't hailed Jesus as Messiah. The blessing hadn't happened.
Okay, so back to their plan with James.
Yeah.
Using this revered figure, he was known for his extreme piety, right?
Oh, incredibly so. Spent decades praying in the temple, apparently, begging forgiveness for the people. The source says his knees became horny like that of a camel's from kneeling so much. Incredible image.
Wow. So they asked him to go up to the summit of the temple and, quote, guide the people.
Yeah, the highest point. Everyone could see, everyone could hear. The leaders basically plead with him, "Oh, just one. Please tell us what is the truth concerning Jesus, the crucified." They expected him to denounce Jesus.
But he didn't.
Not at all. His answer was, startling. He proclaims, "Why ask ye me concerning Jesus, the Son of Man? He himself sitteth in heaven, and shall come on the clouds of heaven."
Whoa. So instead of shutting it down, he affirms Jesus' divinity in his return.
Right. And the crowd's reaction. Instantaneous. Massive. They shouted out, "Hosanna to the Son of David!"
Hosanna to the Son of David. Wait, that sounds familiar.
It is familiar. It's the blessing. That thunderous shout from that huge crowd the leaders themselves gathered fulfilled Jesus' 32-year-old prophecy. The condition was met.
Unbelievable. Their plan to suppress Christianity became its public vindication.
Exactly. The crowd, brought there for one reason, ended up proclaiming the very blessing Jesus said had to come first. A pivotal moment.
But a tragic one for James. What happened to him?
Swift and brutal, they seized him, threw him off the temple pinnacle. He actually survived the fall, miraculously.
No way.
Yeah. And lying there injured, he prayed, echoing, Jesus, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Then they stoned him, and finally someone killed him with a fuller's staff. Just awful.
A truly horrific end. And the sources say things happened after that. Omens.
Yeah, remarkable things, independently documented. A great light shone around the altar at 3 a.m. for half an hour. A heifer gave birth to a lamb right there in the temple courtyard during the feast.
Strange.
And maybe the strangest. The huge eastern gate of the temple needed like 20 men to close it. Usually it just opened by itself at midnight. Bolts still fastened, as if the temple itself was, I don't know, opening up.
Okay, so James dies. These omens appear.
Yeah.
What's next?
43 days later, May 19th, 62 CE, heaven responds. While the leaders might have been thinking they'd handled the Nazarene problem, something else was happening.
What did Josephus record? You mentioned him earlier.
Yes, Josephus, a Jewish historian, he recorded this incredible sight. Before sunsetting, chariots and troops of soldiers in their armor were seen running about among the clouds and surrounding of cities.
Armies in the clouds.
Armies in the clouds, matching what James had just proclaimed about Jesus coming on the clouds.
Precisely. It directly echoed James's words and Jesus' own promise about being seen again after that blessing. It looks like heaven's validation. And there was something else. Voices.
Yes, from inside the second temple, voices were heard saying together, let us remove hence. Let us leave this place.
Whoa. Interpreted
As heavenly beings, maybe God himself departing the temple, signaling really the end of that centuries-old covenant relationship, a massive theological shift.
Okay, this is where it gets really critical, right? The interpretation of these signs.
Absolutely crucial. Imagine you're a first-century Jew. You see armies in the sky. What do you think of?
I don't know. Deliverance. Protection.
Maybe the Maccabean crisis a couple centuries earlier. Back then, similar apparitions were seen as God promising deliverance from Greek oppressors.
Ah, so historical precedent.
Right. So instead of seeing these signs, the blessing, James's words, the armies, the voices, as vindicating Christian claims and signaling judgment, they saw it differently.
How so?
They interpreted God's intervention as a promise of military help against Rome.
Okay, so not necessarily rejecting James's message outright, but filtering it through their own hopes and history?
Exactly. Our source calls it a natural but consequential interpretive decision. It wasn't theological opposition at its core, perhaps, but it had massive consequences. It basically turned skeptics into zealots.
Setting the stage for conflict with Rome.
Yeah, a 74-year sequence of escalating conflict. That misinterpretation was the spark.
Okay, so let's get into the core evidence then, these 17 receipts you mentioned. These specific historical events that seem to line up with Revelation.
Right. These are precise, verifiable historical records, often from secular historians, people with no Christian agenda. They form this, unbroken chain of prophetic fulfillment, according to this view.
Let's cover phase 1 first, the initial judgment. This is 62 to 73 CE and includes the first 12 receipts.
Okay.
So receipt, #1. The heavenly armies, we just discussed this. May 19th, 62 CE. Josephus recording troops in the clouds.
And the key pattern here, a supernatural event validates the Christian message, but it gets misinterpreted by the wider Jewish community, leading them down a different path.
Got it. What's receipt, #2?
The prophet of doom. Shortly after those armies appeared, maybe around June 62 CE, this peasant, Jesus, son of Ananias, starts walking around Jerusalem.
And what did he do?
For over 7 years, day and night, he just cried out, woe, woe to Jerusalem, woe, woe to the temple, woe, woe to this people, nonstop.
Wow, 7 years. That sounds intense.
Incredibly intense, and it lines up very directly with the woe passages you find in the book of Revelation.
Okay, and while he's crying woe, we have receipt, #3, let us leave this place.
Exactly. Around the same time the prophet starts his warnings, those voices are heard inside the temple. Let us remove hence. Divine departure.
So God's warning, God's departure.
And our source connects this potentially to Revelation 6, where the martyrs under the altar are crying out for judgment. These first 3 receipts are like the initial warning signs.
Things escalate quickly, though. Receipt, #4, the false Messiah and the sacrifice crisis. August 24, 66 CE. This sounds major.
Oh, it was huge. For over 125 years, they'd offered twice daily sacrifices for the Roman Caesar, the Tamid offering. It was like a core part of their religious and political life, acknowledging Roman role in a way.
And that stopped.
It stopped. Cold. August 24, 66 CE. This wasn't just about ritual, it was a massive statement. It involved taking over Masada, the weapons depot, and the temple leaders deciding, officially, receive no gift or sacrifice for any foreigner.
So a declaration of independence, basically.
Or war, for Josephus straight up calls it the true beginning of our war with the Romans.
Right.
And right in the middle of this, you have Manahem, grandson of Judas the Galilean, marching into Jerusalem in the state of a king, trying to take power by force. A rival messianic figure.
Chaos. And out of this chaos comes receipt. #5, the remarkable victory.
Yeah, November 15, 66 CE. The Zealots actually managed to kick all the Romans out of Jerusalem. First time in 129 years.
How do they manage that?
At Beth Horon Pass, it was a stunning victory, echoed Judas Maccabeus' victory there 230 years earlier, felt like divine intervention to them. They beat 5,680 Romans. And the source suggests their victory songs might have sounded like Revelation 13.4, who is like unto the beast, who is able to make war with him. But that victory didn't last.
Okay, things are really heating up now, both on Earth and apparently in the heavens. Receipt, #6. An actual battle above the Second Temple.
Yes, January 31st, 67 CE. Josephus describes it vividly. 2 clashing battalions fighting directly in the air above the Second Temple. Not just a display like before, but actual aerial combat.
Cosmic warfare.
Pretty much. Our source links this to passages like 1 Thessalonians 4 and Revelation 12, and Tacitus, another historian, confirms that Roman sacrifices were still stopped during this time. The conflict is escalating on all levels.
Amidst all this, how did people identify themselves? This brings us to receipt #7, the mark of the Zealots.
Right. Sources say the Zealots marked their right hands. It was a way to identify fellow resistors.
And the connection to Revelation.
Revelation 13.16 mentions marks on the right hand or the forehead as identifiers, distinguishing those loyal to the beast system from others. In this context, it distinguished the ardent resistors from, say, Roman collaborators or maybe even observant Jews who wore tefillin on their foreheads. Different marks, different loyalties.
Interesting. And speaking of time frames, receipt #8, the 42-month period.
This one's quite specific. Revelation 11.2 says the holy city will be trampled for 42 months.
Okay.
Well, if you look at Josephus' timeline, the Zealots effectively controlled and disrupted the Second Temple for exactly 42 months, from when they really took over around early 67 CE until its destruction in August 70 CE.
Precisely 42 months.
That's what the timeline suggests. And the source notes their actions, desecrating the temple, made them functionally Gentile in their behavior towards God's house, fulfilling that trampling idea.
And during the final siege, things got even stranger. Receipt #9, the sun cometh. The Aramaic warning system? What was this?
Okay, get this. The Romans are besieging Jerusalem, using huge catapults firing 100-pound stones. The Jews on the walls developed a warning system. When they saw a stone coming, they'd shout, Bar, Ada, which means, in Aramaic, it means the sun cometh.
Wait. Seriously?
Seriously, the irony is just staggering. They're warning each other about Roman artillery, but the phrase they're shouting is the sun cometh.
Which connects to Revelation how?
Revelation 16 talks about Christ coming like a thief and mentions judgment involving huge hailstones, like 100 pounds each. So they were completely, unknowingly shouting out a warning that echoed the prophetic description of divine judgment falling upon them.
That's mind-blowing, actually.
It really is. Profound irony.
The siege grinds on, leading to receipt #10, the end of all sacrifices.
Yes, July 14th, 70 CE. That twice-daily Tamid offering we mentioned, it stopped prominently. No more lambs, no available priests. The core ritual of the temple just ended.
And you mentioned a time frame connection here.
Yeah, this is really precise. If you count back 1,260 days, which is exactly 42 months from July 14th, 70 CE, where do you land?
Let me guess. January 31st, 67 CE.
Exactly. The date of that aerial battle over the temple, receipt #6. It's like a hidden timestamp confirming the 42-month prophecy in Revelation 11. It's incredibly specific.
Wow. Okay. And inevitably, this leads to receipt #11, the temple's destruction.
August 4th and 5th, 70 CE, the Second Temple burns. And tragically, it happens on the 9th and 10th of Ab in the Jewish calendar, the very same dates the First Temple was destroyed by the Babylonians centuries before.
An eerie historical echo.
A devastating one. This aligns perfectly with Revelation's imagery of judgment on the great city, Jerusalem, and the absolute end of that old religious system. It's a ground zero moment.
But the conflict wasn't quite over yet. There's receipt #12, the final resolution.
Right. After Jerusalem fell, Rome didn't just stop. They began this methodical campaign across Judea to stamp out the last pockets of resistance. It took nearly 3 years.
And there was a pattern.
A clear geographic pattern of advance. Jerusalem, then Hebron, the forest of Yardenit, Machaerus, Herodium, and finally Masada. This whole campaign is presented by our source as the earthly playing out of the judgment sequence described in Revelation 19.
And Masada was the end, April 10th, 73 CE.
The very end of this phase, the last stand. About 960 Sicarii, remember, the radical group, the originators of the revolt, were cornered there.
Maybe.
They took their own lives. Their leader, Eleazar ben Yair, gave this speech, basically confessing how their own choices, their violence, led directly to this destruction. It's a chilling fulfillment of all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Matthew 26.52.
So that wraps up phase 1, 12 receipts, 62 to 73 CE. Intense judgment, the temple gone, the initial revolt crushed. But Revelation's timeline in this view continues.
It does. And this brings us to a really interesting, maybe controversial part, the binding of Satan.
Revelation 20 talks about Satan being bound for 1,000 years.
Right. But the tricky part is, if you look at the New Testament Acts, Paul's letters, Peter Satan seems incredibly active during that 33 to 73 CE period. He's tempting, deceiving, prowling like a roaring lion. So how could he be bound then?
Good point. So what's the proposed solution?
The source suggests the binding happened after 73 CE. After the temple system, the great harlot, in Revelation's terms, was destroyed. That destruction cleared the way, so to speak.
So Satan was bound following the Jewish war.
That's the idea. Revelation 20.1-3 describes the binding that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled. This interpretation sees that binding starting around 73 CE.
And the 1,000 years. Literally 1,000.
Probably symbolic, representing a significant divinely set period. In actual history, it seems to correspond to about 59 years, from 73 CE to roughly 132 CE, a time of relative peace, actually, and growth for Jewish Christians in Judea.
Okay, so a period of binding, but then things stir up again. Receipt, #13, the Keto's War Bridge, 115, 117 CE.
Yeah, about 18 years after Masada fell, long after you'd think things were settled. Suddenly, there's this huge, coordinated Jewish uprising, not just in Judea, but across the Roman Empire. Egypt, Cyprus, Cyrene, Mesopotamia.
How big was it?
Massive. Documented casualties are around 640,000. It was enormous.
Oh, that's the point of it.
The source argues it wasn't random violence, it was more like strategic reconnaissance and force, testing Roman strength, maybe feeling out weaknesses, a connecting bridge, preparing for something bigger.
Because Satan wouldn't stay bound forever.
Exactly. Revelation 20.3 says he must be loosed a little season. It's presented as a divine necessity, part of the plan.
And Jesus mentioned something about this.
Yeah, the parable of the unclean spirit returning in Matthew 12. Jesus ties Satan's eventual release and worse state to the lifetime of this wicked generation, which contextually seems to point to a deadline around, say, 140 CE.
Okay, so the clock is ticking for Satan's release.
Right, which brings us right up to receipt, #14, Bar Kokhba's Satan Unbound the Christian Challenge. This is 132, 136 CE.
Bar Kokhba, another major figure.
Huge. Simon Bar Kokhba. He's proclaimed King Messiah by none other than Rabbi Akiba, one of the most revered sages. This is just 8 years before that possible generational deadline.
And what was his goal?
An audacious restoration project. Basically, rebuild Jewish independence. But there's a key context. Christianity had been growing successfully in Judea during that relatively peaceful period after 70 CE. More Jews were following Jesus than the rabbis, potentially.
So Bar Kokhba's revolt was partly a reaction to Christian success.
That seems to be the argument, a strategic solution to counter Christianity's appeal. And they took concrete steps.
Like what?
The rabbis implemented something called the Birkat HaMinim. It was a curse, essentially, added to synagogue prayers targeting Nazarenes and the Minim Christians.
What did that achieve?
It forced Jewish Christians to choose, stay in the synagogue and curse Christ, or leave. It effectively separated them from the Jewish community and, crucially, stripped them of the legal protections Jews had under Roman law, making them vulnerable.
Wow, a deliberate severing. And Bar Kokhba's state.
It was a real state for a short time, rebuilt temple facilities, renewed sacrifices, a government, an army, its own coins. But it systematically opposed Jewish Christians. 5 martyrs are recorded as being executed by his regime.
And Bar Kokhba himself had a telling quote.
A very revealing battle declaration. O Lord of the universe, neither help us nor hurt us, for we ourselves shall defeat the enemy. It shows this deep disillusionment, maybe, after 70 CE. Like, don't interfere, God, we'll handle it. A stark contrast to earlier reliance on divine aid.
Okay, so this sets up the final massive confrontation. Receipt, #15, the Hebrew sand of the sea army.
Revelation 20.8 describes Satan gathering nations for the final battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea.
Usually interpreted as Gentile nations, right?
Often, yes. But this interpretation points out that sand of the sea is specific Hebrew covenant language. It's a remez, a hint back to promises made to Abraham, like in Genesis 22, or prophecies like Isaiah 10 about the remnant of Israel. It refers to Hebrew multitudes.
Hebrew multitudes. Where would they come from? Were they scattered?
Exactly. Remember Josephus writing about the 10 tribes beyond Euphrates till now, and are an immense multitude, and not to be estimated by numbers. That's receipt, #16, the immense multitude beyond Euphrates.
So the descendants of the exiled northern kingdom.
That's the idea. 8 centuries of population growth among these exiled groups created this vast demographic pool. The Kitos War, with its 200,000 participants, hinted at this network.
And Bar Kokhba tapped into this?
He activated this global Hebrew network. The numbers cited are just staggering. 400,000 professional soldiers, plus another 585,000 civilian participants mobilized globally. It wasn't just Judea, it was a worldwide Hebrew effort.
Which leads to the almost unbelievable scale of receipt, #17, the 4 billion casualty event.
Yeah, the Babylonian Talmud in Gittin 57b records 4 billion deaths associated with the Bar Kokhba War, specifically around the final siege of Beitar.
4 billion. That sounds impossible for the ancient world.
It does, until you frame it within the context of this mobilized immense multitude of scattered Hebrew tribes potentially involved globally. Suddenly, while still staggering, the source argues it becomes historically credible as representing the total devastation across this vast network, not just in Judea. Cassius Dio even wrote, "The whole earth, one might almost say, was being stirred up over the matter. Planetary scale."
It literally fulfills that sand of the sea number in a terrifying way.
It seems to. A catastrophic conflict on a scale we rarely imagine for that period.
And the outcome.
The end of the little season, 136 CE. Bar Kokhba dies, the revolt is crushed utterly. Roman victory was total. Judea was decimated, maybe 2/3 of the population wiped out. Significant Jewish settlement wouldn't return for over 18 centuries.
And prophetically.
It fulfills Revelation 20.9, and fire came down from God out of heaven and devoured them. The final attempt to reverse the judgment of 70 CE failed. Satan's little season was definitively over.
Okay, wow, that's a lot to take in. 17 receipts spanning 74 years, painting Revelation not as future prediction, but as historical commentary on its own time.
Exactly. So what does this all mean for you listening to this?
Well, this deep dive is proposing that Revelation isn't some disconnected appendix to the Bible. It's the prophetic capstone of the New Testament.
Right. It documents this cosmic drama, God's vindication of Christ, not through abstract theology alone, but through concrete, undeniable historical events playing out between 62 and 136 CE.
It provides a kind of narrative completion.
That's a good way to put it. The theological coherence is pretty striking when you look at it this way. It shows how the Old Covenant vanished away, like Hebrews 8.3 says it would.
It shows how Jesus' promise in Matthew 24, "This generation shall not pass away until all these things take place," could have been literally fulfilled within that first century time frame.
And how God bruised Satan shortly, as Paul promised in Romans 16.20, through that binding after 70 CE and the final defeat in 136 CE.
And the text of Revelation itself.
Well, the Greek grammar, the present tense used for things that are coming, the very Hebrew character of the book, it all arguably supports it being written before these events unfolded, making it actual prophecy, not history written after the fact.
Okay, so here's the provocative thought for you to take away from all this.
What if biblical prophecy isn't primarily about decoding headlines in the distant future, trying to figure out what hasn't happened yet?
What if its most dramatic, detailed prophecies, like those in Revelation, are actually a precise, historically verifiable account of God's mighty acts in the 1st and 2nd centuries? A story already completed.
What if Maranatha, our Lord has come, isn't just about the first advent or a far-off second coming, but refers to this period of judgment and vindication that maybe the world has largely overlooked for 2 millennia?
The 17 receipts seem to suggest it. The grammar might support it. The history, as documented by non-biblical sources, seems to align with it, and the overall theology points towards it.
Maybe Revelation isn't the mysterious, locked book we often think it is. Maybe it's a monument.
A monument to what?
To the faithfulness of God, proving his word, vindicating his son, and closing a chapter of history exactly as he said he would.